This video presentation is designed to support students in EDU 741 and EDU 742 in order to develop a Chapter 1 of your Action Research project. So students, if that is you, welcome. And I'm going to be referring to the syllabus. And then I will also be referring to the first example that was sent to you that looks like this. On the syllabus, you can see the elements that need to be included in your Chapter 1. You will begin with an introduction. Then you will provide your statement of the problem. Next, you'll define any terms that are unfamiliar to the general population. For example, RTI, which we know is response to intervention in the educational world, but the general population would not understand that. Then you provide the purpose of the study. And finally, you state your research questions, and that wraps up Chapter 1. In the example that I have provided for you, the definition of terms actually comes after the research questions, and the logical order of that was dictated by the dissertation chair of that particular dissertation and by the dissertation handbook of the university at the time. For your purposes, the order here that you see on the syllabus is what you need to use. And the example can be where you find the quality of that element and not necessarily the order. Before I begin discussing the introduction, I do want to point out to you that the examples that are provided for you are full dissertation quality, and you do not have to develop the amount of material and detail that is there, especially in the introduction, because that introduction is formed by extensive reading in literature. You are, and you can see it here on the syllabus, only expected to include 5 studies at this point in this term, and then by the end of next term have 10 studies included in your Chapter 2. However, a full dissertation is a minimum of 40, and so that allows for a much more thorough introduction. You can scale that down to what's appropriate for this course. A length is not necessarily the focus, but rather the quality, to make sure that you've established that historical perspective or context that then justifies and gives significance for that proposed research that you are wanting to do, this action research that you're about to endeavor. Let me take a look at that example with you, and the first thing you will notice is the first couple of paragraphs, or maybe the first 3, do not have any cited sources. But very quickly in the introduction, you see that on page 2, the second paragraph there, that another researcher's name has appeared. This is important for you to establish the justification and the historical context for your research. You want to make sure that you're pointing to what other researchers have already done and put that together in a logical way that makes sense and establishes that justification for the research that you are about to accomplish. The introduction continues on with that theme of having other researchers' names mentioned, but then turns to a couple paragraphs or 3 where there are no researchers mentioned anymore, not cited at least. However, you need to understand that that was not developed by opinion. The researcher, in extensively reading through the literature, has begun to bring it all together, even though there are no citations of the specific researchers. That has already been discussed. It will be well discussed in Chapter 2 and cited along the way. But here, we're trying to have you establish the justification and the significance of this research. And that sets the stage and leads us right into the statement of the problem, which the reader would then be lured into thinking, hey, this is a problem, so what is the problem that we need to address in this research. And then you will go on to have your statement of the problem. Now that statement of the problem is something that you have already developed and submitted to me. I have given you suggestions of how to improve that and what you might be able to do in order to polish it, or maybe even go back and rethink. So you can take those suggestions and work with them and include that in how you're leading up through your introduction to the statement of the problem, and then you will give the statement of the problem. Now, of course, on the syllabus, the next element is not the purpose of the study. The next element for you on the syllabus is that you would have any definitions of terms. In the example, those come later, and so you would have to scroll down to the very end to see the definitions of the terms. But you'll put those in here before you give your purpose of the study. Now, when you get to the purpose of the study, you simply have to establish that. It's not a trick question, and it's not necessary that you interpret that any other way. Then it's just, what is the purpose of the study? Okay, one way you can think about this is that the purpose of the study is now flowing or leading into your research questions. So you're going to be stating the purpose of the study from a standpoint of, later you're going to ask the question that answers what you're trying to establish as being the purpose of the study. For example, this says that one of the purposes of the study was to explore the relationship between suspension rate and academic achievement for high schools. In the first research question, that appears. Is there a significant difference between composite ACT gain scores, which would be your academic achievement, and then the low suspension rates for high schools in Tennessee would be your suspension rate? So that's already establishing a question that serves the purpose of the study. So this purpose of the study ties in with the research questions. At this point, let me point out to you about the research questions that you do not have to have as many research questions as you see in the example. Again, this is dissertation quality. And you do not have to have the type of questions that are written here if they don't fit the statistical analyses that you can perform at this point in your program. If you have not learned how to work with advanced statistical analyses, which would be required in question 4, then you don't have to design a question that would require that advanced statistical analysis. You can keep it very simple. When you have something that points to the relationship between two variables, that is a simple test that you can run statistically. If that fits your knowledge of statistics, then you need to use that. I can support you if you wanted to have a more advanced statistical test that you would run. However, there's no reason for you to have to do that, so you may keep it simple in your statistical analyses and write a question that fits your knowledge. The final thing that you would put in the Chapter 1 would be those research questions, and that wraps up the Chapter 1 support that I can provide for you. As always, if you have any questions or concerns, please contact me at any time.